Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is the Hornet guy here. I'm just going to do a short vid on which dye or dyes I use for resizing my 17 Hornet. I've used many different dyes. I started with Lee and Hornet. They're good within their own rights, but they wasn't good enough. So I spent a bit more cash and I went out and I bought myself a decent set of Redding dyes. Redding dyes, the dye that I use, especially I use one dye all the time. The dye that I use has got really tight tolerances, and every time I measure a resize case, they're virtually all the same. So if you can afford it, I'd say maybe go out and buy the best sort of dyes that you can afford. Don't scrimp and scrape and buy cheap and then have to buy expensive ones later on. The Redding dyes are nowhere near the most expensive dyes, but for the price you can't, and the value, you can't beat the Redding dyes. They really are good. So I'll crack on now, and I'll show you the three dyes that I've got, Redding dyes, and then I'll explain to you what they do and which. Okay, why do we resize? This isn't a 17 Hornet, this is a 6555 case. I've just shown you because it's easy, it's bigger, you better see it better than the Hornet case. When you fire the case in your gun and the bullet comes out, all the brass expands, and when it expands it contracts a little bit, so it actually grows in size. So you have to resize your case to make sure that it fits in your chamber. If you don't resize, you won't be able to chamber your round. You possibly could get away with firing it once, just resizing the neck, reloading it and firing it again, but at some point you'd have to resize it because the actual case itself will be too big to fit into your chamber. Redding full length size die. What this does is, this sizes the body, redoes the shoulder, bumps the shoulder back to Sammy spec, and resizes the neck so that you get bullet tension on your bullet when you're seating your new bullet. If you were just to seat a bullet in here now, it'd more likely just fall in because it's expanded as it's been fired, so it's larger than the calibre of the bullet. So what you do is you resize. This die, like I said, will resize the body, the shoulder and the neck. I don't use full length size dies for the simple reason being, if I take it apart, the actual die compresses the case down to factory spec or Sammy spec, so it's actually working the brass. It actually compresses the neck, it compresses the neck in and it pushes the shoulder back. So it's worked the brass in three places there. But what happens is, how your brass gets worked a lot with the full length die is, on your spindle you get a decapping rod and you get an expander ball. What happens is, I know it's the wrong case but I'm just doing it for show purposes so you can see, the expander ball goes into the case is compressed, resized, the neck is actually compressed smaller than the expander ball, so that when you backstroke on your press and you pull your case down out of your die, this expander ball is what expands your neck and your mouth of your case to the right size spec for the bullet that you're wanting to be seating. So therefore you're working your brass really hard. You're working your neck on the way in, it's compressing it, and it's expanding it on the way out, so you're working the brass twice. That's why I don't use a full length body, a full length die, sorry. Right, next, I used to use these. This is a Redding neck size die. All this does it just resizes your neck of your case. That's all it does. It just resizes the neck. You can get neck sizing dies that bump the shoulder back, but this isn't one. This is just purely a neck sizing die. What I had to do with this is I could do maybe 2 firings with a neck sizing die, and then I'd have to go back, revert to the full size die, because obviously my cases were expanding. Because like I said, all it's doing is this top bit here. It's not touching the shoulder and it's not touching the body. So the case gets fire formed to my rifle, but that's a separate subject, fire form. We'll talk about that later on. The case actually gets fire formed, but it still grows, but it'll grow to a certain extent that you won't be able to chamber it. So what I had to do is I was using 2 firing twice or resizing twice with a neck sizing die, and then resizing with a full sizing die to take it back to sandwich spec. So basically you're starting from scratch. That's the neck sizing die. That still has the expander ball in, so that still does the same. That's still going in, it's compressing your neck, and the expander balls is opening your neck. So you are actually working your brass. Even though you're only doing the neck, it's still working the brass really hard. The die I use all the time now is a S-type bushing die for the 17 Hornet. This is a full body die, so it still works the body and it bumps the shoulder, and it also resizes the neck. But the difference is, with this, you still get your spindle, you still get your decapping pin, and you still get your expander ball. I take these off. I don't need that because I do a separate process for my Hornet, which you've seen on one of my other videos for depriming or decapping. I just take this off and put it to one side. I don't use this at all because I'm not wanting to work my brass too much. So what it is with a bushing die is you get a nitrate bushing. So basically what happens is the neck of the 17 Hornet goes in, when it's compressed in the die, goes into the bushing, and all the bushings are numbered, and I have a specific setting on mine for my bullets. Mine is a 190 and it springs back to about a 191.191. But you can get different size bushings for different size tensions. It all depends what you want. But in my rifle and my loading process, the 190 works best for me for the bullets that I use. So what you do is the bushing, don't forget it's a full length die, so it's going to do the body, and I can bump the shoulder. You put the bushing in, numbers up. You put your locking screw for your spindle in, otherwise it won't work. Put your locking cap back on. Tighten it down. That's tight. There's a slight bit of rattle, so what you want to do is you want to turn it back 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn, lock it off so you can hear that rattle. The reason why you do that is that bushing is now free floating, so that will self-center on my brass when I enter it into the die. So when that 17 Hornet round goes into the die, it'll resize the body. I can do the neck or the shoulder, I can bump it back to whatever setting I want, or just straight back to a sandwich spec, and then it also resizes the neck. But what it does with the neck is, because there's no expander ball in, it compresses the neck to the size of the bushing, which is a 190, and you'll always get spring back where the brass springs back. So when the brass springs back, I always get about 19.5 or 0.1915 or 0.191, which is what I want, the spec that I want for my tension on my bullet, because it works well in my gun, like I said before. So you're not working your brass extremely hard, you're compressing it a bit on the body and you're compressing it a bit down there, but it's mainly on the neck where it gets hammered, where it gets a lot of abuse, because you're resizing with a full size die or an X size die. So with a bushing die, basically all you're doing is you're just compressing the neck to the size you want. When you pull it back out of the die, you'll get a bit of spring back, but it won't be much, and that's worked half as much as what it would if you were to run an expander ball through the mouth and down through the neck. I've used the Reading die, this die, for at least a good year and a half, and I have had no issues whatsoever with my brass. I have fired 7, 8, 9 times with Hornet brass. It is small, it is finicky, it is delicate, but I've not had no issues whatsoever we're using Reading brass, Reading dies, sorry. Also, I had an issue where I wanted a micrometer for my seating die for my Reading, and I couldn't get one in this country. And also I dropped a die and I bent a spindle. And I contacted Reading in America, emailed them, and within a week they'd sent me a new spindle free of charge, and also they'd spent me, because I said I couldn't get one in the UK at the time, the micrometer for the bullet seater, they actually sent me one of them free of charge as well. So customer service on Reading is fantastic, can't knock it. Keep doing good products. They are good products, they are good. If you can afford them, I'd say give them a go. They're not they're not the most expensive, but they're not the cheapest neither. But if you want your brass to last, use decent equipment. Right, thanks for watching. My next video will be on I'll actually resize my Hornet cases, my 17 Hornet cases, and then we'll crack on and see what we do from there. Right, thanks. I hope this helps you out. If you need to, leave some comments down below if you need any help or any advice or anything, and give me the good thumbs up if you would, please.